What is going on, everybody? What is going on? The Catch fam, my name is John Dawson, and in today's video, we are hopping into another 2023 fantasy football mock draft. Today, we've got a 12-team full PPR mock draft. We are running with one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, one tight end, one flex, and 5 bench spots, as well as a kicker and defense. If you guys have any mock draft requests for the month of August, this is what I do every year. I will take any mock draft requests. Please let me know down below, regardless of format, super flex, 3 wide receivers, 8 teams, 10 teams, whatever it is. Let me know in the comments down below and I will get it put on the schedule. On top of that, if you guys are new to the channel, I would greatly appreciate if you guys consider subscribing. All we do here is free fantasy football content all year round. Redraft, Dynasty, and Best Ball. If you're into that, hit that subscribe button. Whether you guys are new or not, hit that like button on the way in. And like I said, any mock draft requests you guys have, drop a comment down below. Be sure to join our free Discord so you guys get our weekly, nightly mock draft invites on Discord, as well as the ability to send out mock drafts at any time if you guys want to on our Discord, where real competitive members of our community will join your mock drafts and help you prepare. On top of that, if you guys have any questions pertaining to the 2023 fantasy football season, drop them down below. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Without further ado, let's hop into today's mock draft. All right, so what I'm going to do throughout this video is just give you guys round by round advice. That's generally what I do in these mock draft uploads. So sitting here at the 1.10, we're in a very good position to grab a stud wide receiver and then turn around in the second round and grab another stud wide receiver, or see if there's a running back there that we like as our hero running back. So just depends on who is available at the 1.10 and 2.3. We'll just kind of sit back and see what happens. If for some reason, Austin Eckler or Bijan Robinson fall out to the 1.10, then we're going to switch to a hero running back method, where we go running back in the first round, then probably wide receiver for the next 3 rounds. But like I said, we'll just kind of sit back and see what happens here. So far, we've got Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase off the board, very typical for the 1-1 and 1-2. C-Max gone at the 1-3, also very typical. And then, Kupp, Bijan, Hill, Eckler, Travis Kelce, even CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, and A.J. Brown can all go at any point in that same range. So the first round is kind of all over the place after JJ and Chase so far this offseason, but a lot of good names, a lot of good value nonetheless. So I'm going to take CeeDee Lamb off the board. He's my top rated wide receiver who is available. If I can turn around here at the 2.3 and snag Amon-Ra St. Brown, or somehow snag Garrett Wilson, I'm going to be very happy. I'm going to bet that A.J. Brown is not available. Devontae Adams, also a good option. But if all those guys are gone, we can always fall into the next tier of Jalen Waddle or Chris Olave, and I like both of those players as well. If we're going to go running back here at the 2.3, kind of in a weird spot because, the top-rated running back is Jonathan Taylor, and at the time I'm recording this, traditionally throughout the offseason, I've liked him at the 2.3, but he's in such a weird situation with the contract dispute and the injuries that I'm just not willing to take him. Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, other options you could consider here. And then Josh Jacobs is probably going to fall out quite a bit, similar to Jonathan Taylor, because of their current situation. So for me, Amon-Ra St. Brown, an absolute steal right here. I love him at the 2.3. Happy to start this draft wide receiver heavy, being that we are in a full PPR format. Lock up those 2 stud wide receivers and we'll move right along. So if I was going to go running back there, we're kind of hoping for Saquon Barkley or Nick Chubb to fall out, which I've seen plenty of times. It's just going to depend on your specific draft. And like I said, every now and then you may run a draft where Austin Eckler somehow falls out to the 1.10. Bijan, I don't think is as likely, but sometimes he does fall out to like the 1.7, 1.8, so you never know. Regardless, moving along here, we'll kind of sit back and see what happens before we make that game plan for the 310, 4.3. But what I'm going to be looking at is grabbing that first running back off the board for this roster. And then at the 4.3, I'm probably turning around and grabbing my flex player another wide receiver, locking up who I think will be another stud, whether it's DJ Moore, Drake London, Christian Watson, or even guys like Brandon Ayuk and Christian Kirk. So we'll see what happens here. In terms of running backs, we're going to target there at the 3.10. And don't get me wrong, that could always flip to where we go wide receiver at the 3.10, then running back at the 4.3. But if Jahmyr Gibbs is there, I'm taking him all day long. Not that I want to completely overexpose myself to the Detroit Lions offense, but I like Gibbs in that range as a whole. Kenneth Walker, another guy, even with the groin injury popping up, that I absolutely love in that range. So we'll see who's available when the time comes. Don't mind Travis Etienne. Hopefully one of those guys are available, because I do think there's a little bit of a teardrop once we go into Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, and Dameon Pierce. So we'll sit back and see what happens. Yeah, and there goes Jahmyr Gibbs at the 2.12. So Jahmyr Gibbs is a player who, early in the offseason, after he got drafted to the Lions, I was starting to talk about, by the end of August, he could be an end of the first round pick and undoubtedly move up to, the mid-second round, beginning of the second round. And now that we're in the month of August, we're seeing Jahmyr Gibbs go at the end of the second round. This is the second mock draft I've ran today, and he's gone at the end of the second round in both drafts. So we were just talking about him potentially being there at the 3.10. Even in the past week to 2 weeks, we've seen him in that range. I just think a lot of fantasy managers are getting higher and higher on Jahmyr Gibbs. Does not surprise me at all. Like I said, I was talking about this after the NFL draft. Now we're kind of seeing it actually happen, and it makes a lot of sense when you look at his pass catching ability, as well as how often the Lions are probably going to run the ball this year. And don't get me wrong, I still like David Montgomery as a later round value, but Jahmyr Gibbs is the player that is going to bring a lot of upside at the running back position. All right, moving into the third round here, we see our first quarterback off the board, our second tight end off the board, so Jalen Hurts and Mark Andrews. Two wide receivers gone here, Amari Cooper and T. Higgins. T. Higgins, interesting because sometimes you'll see him go right at the end of the second round, sometimes even in the middle of the second round. And even Calvin Ridley just went to 3.6 there. Ridley, obviously, throughout the offseason has been another player with just a lot of offseason hype. And as a whole, he is definitely gone sometimes at the end of the second round. He's definitely a player. If you want to target Calvin Ridley, you're probably going to have to make a game plan to go out and get him before anyone else does. So just keep that in mind. Josh Jacobs, another player here who, we're seeing go all over the place. Sometimes at the 3.10, 3.11, sometimes still like the 2.11, 2.12, sometimes even at like the 2.8, 2.9. So it's with his contract situation, it's a very gray situation at the moment, and he's just kind of going all over the place. So he's off the board there at 3.4. Breece Hall is gone as well at the 3.7. A lot of these players here, like Breece Hall, in that same kind of caliber where he's just kind of going all over the place depending on who you're drafting with. So second quarterback gone here, and Patrick Mahomes. For me, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker, my top targets. So I don't mind Etienne here, and I don't mind Walker. I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker because if it wasn't for the groin injury that just popped up this past week, Kenneth Walker would be my selection here undoubtedly. I've been very high on Kenneth Walker throughout the offseason. I'm not concerned about them going out and drafting Zach Charbonnet. I do understand that he's going to take away some touches. He could be used in the red zone even, and he is going to be the pass catching back for the Seahawks. But when you look at the Seattle Seahawks team traditionally over the years, they've always implemented two running backs. And I think that Kenneth Walker is still going to have the ability to be an absolute stud this year. I think he's too good of a value to pass up where he's going overall after having 1,000 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns through 15 games last year and finishing as a top 20 back. So I still like Walker in that range. I'm actually perfectly okay with taking Walker as my quote-unquote hero running back. All right, here at the 4.3, I'm going wide receiver, and there are some top-tier kind of names here in DK Metcalf and Deebo Samuel, even guys like Keenan Allen and DeAndre Hopkins, Terry McLaurin, also a very good option here. But for me, the guy that I like the most, and I don't want to disrespect DK Metcalf because I actually think he's a good pick right here, but just for the sake of the mock draft, I'm going to go with DJ Moore because he's a player, if you guys have been following the channel, ever since he got traded to Chicago, I've been talking about him all offseason long, and I know that there are enough people out there that aren't high on him that I'm just going to continue to draft him because I like DJ Moore that much. And I want to try and get that into as many of your guys' minds as possible. I think when you look at the trends throughout the past couple of years in the NFL, Tom Brady going to the Buccaneers, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin getting a new quarterback, huge upside there for those guys. You look at Cooper Kupp getting a new quarterback in Matthew Stafford, huge upside there. Then you look at A.J. Brown going to the Eagles, getting Jalen Hurts at quarterback, a ton of upside there as well. So for me, DJ Moore, who's always been productive with his time in Carolina, with literally nobody that I can even think of naming. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's been some guys at quarterback there, but you get the point. He's always been productive, right? And I think that DJ Moore is going to have a great year with Justin Fields, and this Bears offense is going to take another step forward. I'm not saying they're going to be anywhere equivalent to what the Eagles did last year, but maybe if you took a look at what the Eagles did the year before, I think that's what the Bears could start to be. Now, the Eagles roster that year is still better, but I think the Bears are just in a good spot. Jalen Hurts in his sophomore year, 3,100 passing yards, 16 passing touchdowns, 784 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns. Was a quarterback 9 in fantasy that year. I think that Justin Fields could easily be in that range, especially when we saw what he did last year already. So I do believe that DJ Moore is going to be very good this year, and I believe that Justin Fields is going to be an okay passer. I'm not worried about him throwing the football. He was a great passer in college, and I think he's going to take a step forward as well as this Bears offense. So there's my spiel. I like DJ Moore. If you hate him, let me know down below. I'm perfectly okay with taking him there. Like I said, Metcalf is still a really good value there. Kind of hard to pass on Metcalf there, who I still like quite a bit, and I still think at the 4.6 a really good selection there. But I'm going to take DJ Moore just for the sake of argument. All right, 4th round wraps up there. We see 3 quarterbacks gone in the 4th round: Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson. We've got just 2 running backs, Joe Mixon and Miles Sanders. Other than that, all wide receivers. Okay, so moving on to the 5.10 and 6.3. A couple of things we want to monitor here. I'm trying to let a good value quarterback fall to me tonight. Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence, for me, there's a big drop-off after those guys. I still like Dak Prescott and Deshaun Watson. I don't even mind Tua, maybe paired with Geno Smith or paired with Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, as some late-round selections. But there's just a big drop-off when Herbert and Lawrence are off the board. So I want to monitor those 2 guys. If we don't take them with one of these next 2 picks, we're probably not getting them. So we want to take a look at what running backs and wide receivers are currently available. There are some running backs that I really like in this range: Dameon Pierce, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, Rashad White, Isaiah Pacheco, David Montgomery. I don't think we will get any of those guys if we wait until the next round. So when we look at the available wide receivers, 3 guys that just went are 3 guys that I absolutely love: Ayuk, Christian Kirk, and Hollywood Brown. I would have been happy to get any of those guys as my wide receiver 4 with this next pick. But nonetheless, let's take a running back. Give me DeAndre Swift. I know some of you guys probably hate DeAndre Swift because you've been burnt by him the past couple of years, but I'm actually a big fan of DeAndre Swift. I'm going to give him one last chance. I was a big fan last year as well. But when you look at some of the advanced analytics for DeAndre Swift last year, he was very efficient on the field. I'm not worried about him when he's on the field with the Eagles because this offense is so good that, all the pressure is not going to be on him. And I think at times the Lions coaching staff just did not fully trust DeAndre Swift. A lot of lingering injuries. The advantage that he has with the Philadelphia Eagles is that defenses have to account for Jalen Hurts, They also have to account for A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. When you look at the Lions pass catchers last year, as much as I like Amon-Ra St. Brown, we weren't dealing with the same pass catchers on that team, right? I mean, you got Dallas Goedert there as well. So it's going to be much more difficult for defenses to really figure out how to defend DeAndre Swift. Plus, when you look at this backfield with Rashad Penny and Kenneth Gainwell and even Boston Scott there, they're not just going to utilize one running back within this offense. DeAndre Swift is not going to have all of the pressure on him. So I think he is a really good pick actually going into this season. All right, so a couple players we could take a look at here. I don't mind Michael Pittman. I don't mind Tyler Lockett. If you wanted to grab another wide receiver here, if you want to go running back here, Rashad White's a player that I like the most, but let's just go ahead and take Trevor Lawrence, take him off the board. He's going to have a very, very good junior year, and you could even call it a sophomore year because look at that rookie season with Urban Meyer, it was just an absolute mess at the end of the day. I don't even know if you can count that as a rookie season. But like I said, if we waited, I don't mind getting Dak Prescott or Deshaun Watson a little bit later and getting another running back that we're confident in here. Maybe we had to reach for Rachaad White, but I don't particularly mind doing so. Maybe we go with another wide receiver, Michael Pittman, Tyler Lockett. Like I said, two really good options, but I'm going to cross my fingers that Jahan Dotson and or Zay Flowers are available with those next coming picks. I also like Elijah Moore and Cortland Sutton as we start to look where we're going to be drafting at the 7.10 and 8.3. Looking at available running backs, we're not going to get Rachaad White. We probably won't get Isaiah Pacheco. I would love to land David Montgomery here, and I also would like to move into that tier of A.J. Dillon, Antonio Gibson, and Brian Robinson. So more than likely with these next two selections, we're just going to go wide receiver and running back, add some depth. When we take a look at this roster so far, Trevor Lawrence, Kenneth Walker, DeAndre Swift, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Moore, we're looking pretty good here. One thing that I like to do at times is just start to fill out my roster. Like when we're looking at roster construction, looking at strategy, like I want to take my quarterback. I want to get two running backs out of the way. I want to get two wide receivers out of the way and a flex option out of the way. When it comes to the tight end position, generally speaking, I'm just looking for a good value. I'm going to let a guy fall to me. I'm going to let Pat Freiermuth or David Njoku fall to me. Maybe Evan Ingram. If those guys don't come to me, then I'm just going to hold off and draft Cole Kmet, maybe pair him with Dalton Kincaid or Greg Dulcich, and call it a day. If I'm not drafting Kelsey, if I'm not drafting Andrews, which a majority of the time I'm not, unless they're just too good of a value for me to pass up. And if I'm not getting those guys, I'm just letting a good value tight end come to me and calling it a day. So looking at who's available here as we're continuing into the 7th round, Rachaad White, long gone. And listen, I'm really high on Rachaad White going into the year, so I don't even have a problem taking him before Connor, Akers, and Pierce at the 6.3 if we didn't go Trevor Lawrence. I think in full PPR, Rachaad White's going to have a great year. Love him as an RB3 for sure. But now that we know that we're not going to get him, Isaiah Pacheco becomes my top target. I like him quite a bit as an RB3, and we do want some depth behind Walker and Swift, who obviously have some injury history, but hey, can't really name any pair of running backs in the NFL without saying injury history. So Isaiah Pacheco, David Montgomery, my top targets for the 7.10. And then at the 8.3, I'm hoping Zay Flowers does fall out. Mike Evans just went off the board, but even with him gone, there are some pretty good wide receivers available, so I think we have a shot. There goes David Montgomery. So for me, we're hoping to get Isaiah Pacheco here, and if we don't, we'll figure out a game plan, but we got Isaiah Pacheco anyway. So I like Pacheco as a RB3, tied to a good offense. Do I think his ceiling's incredibly massive? No, but I've been a fan of Pacheco all off season. I'm happy to take him as my RB3. So at the 8.3, we just want to go with the wide receiver that we have the most faith in. And for me, believe it or not, there's some interesting names here. George Pickens just went. Treylon Burks is available. Quentin Johnston's interesting. But for me, Zay Flowers is the guy I want, and there he goes at the 8.1. So for me, I don't actually mind taking Quentin Johnston here. I think Treylon Burks is interesting as well. You've got another tier a little bit lower here, Elijah Moore, Cortland Sutton. I actually like both of those guys where their value is in drafts right now. But for me, let's just go ahead and get a little bit of upside potentially. For me, I actually would have preferred one of those two rookies there, Zay Flowers or Quentin Johnston, who's now gone. So now we're just at a point where we have to pivot. We're really relying on those first three wide receivers we took, and I'm pretty happy with them. So let's get our fourth and probably final running back out of the way. Let's go Antonio Gibson, which I'm fine with. Walker, Swift, Pacheco, Gibson. I can definitely live with that backfield going into this coming year. And now we're just in a position where we need to grab our tight end. We have the ability in terms of our roster construction here to add a second tight end if we're not super confident in our late round tight end. And outside of that, we need to get some backhand wide receiver depth for this roster. Like I said, I am actually pretty confident in CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra, and DJ Moore. If we had gone Metcalf or Watson or even Drake London over DJ Moore, I'm okay with those guys as well. Those first three wide receivers you take in a single flex format are going to be very, very important. Make sure they are guys that you have full faith in. But I think we have a quarterback who's going to have a great year. We have a good backfield that also gives us a good amount of upside. So like I said, we need to grab that tight end. We'll see if we want to grab a second tight end later on. But for the purpose of this mock, we really just want to start focusing on some late round wide receivers. So a number of these guys could get taken by the next time we draft, but let's start to take a look at couple names here. So like I said, Cortland Sutton. Yeah, you hear that name, you kind of throw up in your mouth a little bit. Everyone loves Jerry Jeudy. Went at the 4.7 tonight. I've seen Jerry Jeudy go as early at the 3.5 and 12-team mocks. But Cortland Sutton, you know, when you look at last year, yeah, it wasn't great. The ceiling was pretty low, but he still gave you double-digit fantasy points in games where he was healthy in every game except for 4. So, you know, he gave you 10 or more fantasy points, actually 11 or more fantasy points in every other game that he was healthy in. So, you know, he did miss 2 games and basically 3 games because he got hurt in the middle of week 13 against Baltimore. But yeah, like I said, the ceiling, not super high whatsoever. But at least you know if it comes down to it, you can put him in your flex. Sean Payton-led offense, and he's probably going to get you at least 10 points. So can't be worse than last year. I kind of like Cortland Sutton in this range. Sky Moore is the other guy that I love in this range. And I'm telling you guys right now, there are 2 wide receivers at the time that I'm recording this that if you want them in this kind of like 8th through 11th round range, you just have to go out and draft them. We can't worry about ADP anymore. We can't try to use ADP for these 2 guys because too many fantasy managers are just going out and drafting them when they want them. So Zay Flowers, who goes at the 8.1 tonight, there are enough people out there, including myself, who want Zay Flowers, who believe he can be a wide receiver 1 for the Ravens, that they're going out and drafting him whenever they can if they want him on their team. You know, you look at the team tonight, the 1.12, if they don't take Zay Flowers there's no way he's coming back around at the 9.12, 10.1. Similar to Sky Moore going to the team at the 1.1 tonight, if they don't take him right there's no way that he's coming back to them. You just have to be conscious of those 2 guys. They are not being drafted at their current ADP whatsoever. I'm telling you guys right now, if you want Zay Flowers, if you want Sky Moore, don't look at ADP. I mean, don't get me wrong. You don't want to draft them in the 5th round or anything, but you know what I'm saying? Don't look at ADP because you're going to have to go out and make a plan to get those guys if you want them on your respective squads. Okay. Moving into the 9.10, I would say my top target here is Cortland Sutton. We just went over it, but, you know, at the end of the day, with the news that Tim Patrick's going to be out for the year and that KJ Hamler, who, you know, wasn't really contributing a ton, but, you know, is getting cut and everything, those are good things for Cortland Sutton. And I do think when you're starting to look at these later tier wide receivers, you do want to think about, you know, who are some of the guys who could potentially be kind of handcuff wide receiver 1s or even wide receiver 2s. You know, if Jerry Jeudy misses time, how much does Sutton's value go up? We want to start to identify some of those guys as well. So I'll take Sutton there. I don't mind him in the 9th round as my wide receiver 4 in a full PPR format. Now, if you're not playing in full PPR, I'm probably not taking a look at Cortland Sutton. But nonetheless, let's move along here. Top available quarterbacks, Prescott, Anthony Richardson, Cousins, Rodgers. Top available running backs, Zach Charbonnet, Jerick McKinnon, Algier, Devin Singletary, Donta Foreman. Top available wide receivers, Kadarius Toney, Rashad Bateman, Thielen, Jacoby Myers, and Darnell Mooney. Top available tight ends might be where I go here. You know, when we look at wide receivers, I do like Jacoby Myers in this range because I feel like the Raiders are going to be playing from behind a ton. But I also like Evan Engram, Pat Freiermuth, and David Njoku a lot at tight end. Don't really think you can go wrong with any of these guys, but I'm going to go Evan Engram just because I have Trevor Lawrence on this team, and that gives us, you know, a quote-unquote stack. I really like Pat Freiermuth. I think he's going to be as consistent as any tight end in the league this coming year in fantasy, but Evan Engram gives us a little bit of upside, you know, maybe a little bit more inconsistency, but the fact that we have Trevor Lawrence and we can kind of stack them on top of each other gives us some pretty good value. Now, if we don't go Engram there, and let's say we go with a wide receiver, you know, Rashad Bateman, Darnell Mooney, Jacoby Myers, Rondell Moore, there's some good names there, you know. I'm okay with that. And then we look at the tight end in the 11th or 12th, guys like Cole Kmet paired with, you know, Greg Dulcich or Dalton Kincaid is a perfect tight end room. Or even if you just want to go out and get Cole Kmet. I mean, Cole Kmet, a player that I talked about a lot this offseason, was your tight end 7 last year in full PPR. He's going to have a good year. I think he's easily my favorite true late round tight end target. And at the end of the day, he's just coming at the best overall value. You know, Ingram and Njoku, Freiermuth gone in the 10th. Kmet's probably going the 11th, and I do like Greg Dulcich a lot as well, but just keep those names in mind in terms of late round tight ends that you guys can target. So moving into the 11th here, here's a look at the roster. Trevor Lawrence, Kenneth Walker, DeAndre Swift, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Evan Ingram, DJ Moore. Then on our bench, Pacheco, Gibson, and Cortland Sutton. So for me, just want to grab 2 more wide receivers. Potentially, we could go wide receiver, running back. You know, get one more kind of late round running back. You know, Jerick McKinnon's out there. Kind of had the Chiefs locked up if we did that. I do like some names like Kendre Miller, even Donta Foreman. I think is going to get a lot of touches to start the year. We got those Miami running backs floating around, but, you know, maybe Dalvin Cook goes there. Or, I don't know, maybe Jonathan Taylor gets traded there. But at the end of the day, nothing happens to that backfield. I still think, you know, Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, or Mostert's already gone, but Jeff Wilson's an okay value here. But at the end of the day, a lot of these running backs I think could potentially be available on the waiver wire if you wanted to make a move, you know, beginning of the season or the first couple of weeks of the season. So I'm not too crazy on these guys. I do like Jerick McKinnon, but if I already have Pacheco, I just don't want to overexpose myself. I feel like wide receivers are more valuable here. So, you know, we just talked about Cole Kmet and Greg Dulcich. I'll still consider them. I don't traditionally really draft 2 tight ends, but there's still guys to consider. Looking at quarterbacks, you know, I really like Geno Smith going into this season. I think Daniel Jones is fine in this range. Kyler Murray is a great value. You know, if Kyler's ready by week 4, he's a fantastic value. You know, before he got hurt last year, he's a top 7 quarterback in fantasy and was perfectly fine. So I still like Kyler. And then Anthony Richardson's the other name that I like late. I like him either behind a good top tier quarterback, whether it's that tier of Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert, or if it's a tier of Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. But I also like him behind maybe a quarterback you got later that you're not as confident in because he brings some upside to the table. So he's an option, but generally speaking, I want to take a look at wide receivers here because this is a full PPR format and I just value the wide receiver position. So Darnell Mooney, Romeo Doubs, those are the 2 guys that I'm taking a look here, and Rashid Shaheed as well. I mean, I also like going a little bit later, maybe Alec Pierce, Van Jefferson, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. So we definitely have some backhand value at wide receiver. Another late guy you can take a look at is Isaiah Hodgins. I think he's going to have a good role in that Giants offense. There's so many Giants pass catchers you can take a chance on late in drafts. For me, Isaiah Hodgins is the guy to do so. And we'll just see who's available here at the 11.10. And there goes Cole Kmet. So that's kind of off of the board for us. Maybe we could still take Greg Dulcich. But for me, I think we try and get like Romeo Doubs and Rashid Shaheed, Romeo Doubs and Van Jefferson, and just call it a day. I do think, you know, I prefer that wide receiver depth here at the end of the draft. So Romeo Doubs, a guy that I absolutely love in this range. We're only getting good reports out of training camp for Romeo Doubs, and, you know, we're really getting a lot of buzz that he is actually Jordan Love's favorite target. Don't get me wrong, I want Christian Watson over Romeo Doubs 100% of the time. You know, we know what Watson's going to bring to the table. Maybe not as consistent this year, but he's going to bring that upside, be the big play guy, be able to stretch the field, make those kind of like Tyreek Hill type plays. So I'm all about Christian Watson. It's not a knock on him at all, but I've been kind of talking about this for a couple weeks now. Romeo Doubs in later rounds is a player that I really like, and he also showed enough flashes in his rookie season that I feel good about him in the 11th round. And at the end of the day, you know, while you may not be super confident in the Packers offense with Jordan Love at quarterback, at the end of the day, somebody has to catch footballs. And I always kind of say it, bad offenses can still produce good fantasy players, whether you like to believe it or not. All right, so a couple of those targets, Rashid Shaheed, Darnell Mooney, both gone. I love Shaheed in this range, been taking him left and right, but let's go Van Jefferson here. I do like Alec Pierce, DPJ, both pretty decent options there as well. Isaiah Hodgins, okay too. If we went tight end, like I said, it would have been Greg Dulcich. If we took another quarterback here, we kind of just talked about that, but Richardson, Geno Smith, Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray, any of those guys are fine. But For me, let's go Van Jefferson here because he is kind of locked into that wide receiver 2 spot, in my opinion, for the Rams, who, had Matthew Stafford coming back. Sean McVay still the head coach here. And at the end of the day, they're going to throw the football. And Van Jefferson, if he wasn't hurt last year, he was coming off of a year in 2021 where he had over 800 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns off of 50 receptions, 16 yards per catch. Last year, he still had 15.3 yards per catch off of 24 receptions. Obviously, only played through 11 games. So I do like Van Jefferson as a late round flyer at wide receiver. Obviously, like I said, there's a couple other names I consider there as well. But when we look at this roster now, we're just going to keep it true to form, draft a kicker in defense, and call it a night. So we've got Trevor Lawrence, Kenneth Walker, DeAndre Swift, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Evan Engram, DJ Moore. I feel very good about this starting lineup. Plenty of upside here, but also guys that I think are just going to have solid years in fantasy. Looking at the bench, we've got Isaiah Pacheco and Antonio Gibson as our bench running backs, Cortland Sutton, Romeo Doubs, and Van Jefferson as our bench wide receivers who could potentially move into the flex. So overall, I feel pretty good about that roster. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. Once again, 12 teams here, full PPR, 1 flex. I think this is a pretty good looking roster at the end of the day, and hopefully gave you guys enough reasoning throughout the draft as to why I selected the players that I did, that even if you don't agree, maybe you kind of see my viewpoint at the end of the day. And like I said, there are definitely players throughout this draft that we were targeting, especially in the later rounds, that did not fall to us or just got drafted a little bit before we went after them. So it's always good to kind of try and put yourself in a position during these mocks where you're a little bit uncomfortable and have to select some players that maybe you didn't exactly want to. But nonetheless, guys, once again, if you have any mock draft requests for the 2023 fantasy football season, let me know down below. I will get it on the schedule. I will make it in a pre-recorded video, or I'll let you know if I want to make it a live stream and have you guys hop in with me. So on top of that, just let me know in the comments down below what you think of today's mock. Was it awful? What picks would you change? What picks did you like or not like? On top of that, if you guys are new to the channel, thank you so much for watching today and being here. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. And make sure you guys hit that like button whether you guys are new to the channel or not. We'll go ahead and draft our kicker here, or our defense, whatever order you really want to go with. Let's just take the Patriots defense. They were number 1 last year, and then we'll take a kicker to wrap things up here. Guys, any comments, questions, concerns you have pertaining to the 2023 fantasy football season, let me know down below as well. And that'll kind of wrap up today's video. I'm just going to draft a defense and kicker. Like I said, I'm completely okay if you do play with a kicker and defense with just streaming kickers and defense all year round. And in case you guys are wondering, my co-host Steven does a must-start kicker and must-start defense video every week of the season. So if you guys do play with kickers and defenses in your respective leagues, we are the channel that is going to actually make content to help you guys out. And we really enjoy doing that every single season. So stay posted going into the year for those videos coming as well. So picking a kicker here, let's just go with Dicker the Kicker because it's a fun name, and that'll wrap up today's video. So like I said, drop your comments. Let me know what mock drafts you guys need me to run. Subscribe, hit the like, all that good stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys are getting pumped. It's August. It's time for us to really start preparing for the 2023 fantasy football season. Thank you guys so much for watching today and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch, and peace.